Welcome to a well-regulated militia of civilians. Yours truly. Got a little conversation today kind of surrounding our foundation, how we represent. First things first, sometimes you got to be very clear at how you represent. And obviously it also takes a long time to really break it down. And sometimes breaking it down, you need little intricates here and there about it. But we're going to get to the point because I'm the no cut cards person. I like to show respect to everybody, but I'm still a no cut cards person. So, don't want to mislead nobody. Two opinions. All right. First of all, opinion directive. Reason why we call what we call is because we show specific focus and support for the Second Amendment. Obviously, we believe in all the laws when they're practiced and upheld correctly for all citizens. And in addition to that, we believe that everything within moderation is of great respect. And when you understand not just the origin of something, but when you understand it from a perspective of its good perspective, the origin of a good perspective, because not everything was done. And obviously this doesn't just go to American history. It goes to history, period, of every nation that ever existed, the good, the bad, and the ugly, which in many cases for every last one of them got a whole lot of ugly in it. And we're seeing that on both sides of the ball. And I'll explain to you what I mean by both sides of the ball in a little bit. But right now, we just want to bring up the opener. So in general, again, like I said, we straightforward. This channel is dedicated to the Second Amendment and against all those that infringe on it. And when I say that, I'm not saying that arrogantly. I'm saying that with an understanding and a respecting understanding that when you apply common sense to things, you have a standard that's to be upheld. I didn't create the standard. I wasn't even born nowhere near the standard. Now, but you have a standard that's created, and it has a good purpose for it. And it has a logical reason why it was even executed. Obviously, we already know the history of that. Obviously, America, before it became America, in spite of what it's done, had to fight the British because of the tyranny that they was trying to put on. Obviously, we already knew they were a tyrant government because of all the other nations who had to face them and the conquistador process. So obviously you can speak on it with some specifics, when you go into it, but that's not necessarily the point that we want to angle in. And we want to get a general, because we don't want, obviously we could sit here, especially with a panel, and have conversations all day and for the rest of the week when it comes to these subjects. But we're going to try to get to the point on some information, some current information that we saw that was interesting and intriguing for podcast. And we're going to kind of freestyle through it. But, we wanted to make the opener and wanted to make it clear. We represent the Second Amendment with detail, specifics on it being executed properly without infringement. But at the same time, and when I say but, I'm not saying but anything else. I'm saying with respect to the utmost of safety, the utmost of concern for any other American citizen that we have to live amongst each other with. So obviously that goes without saying. I'm going to give a small example. So every typical country has its military, no matter how small or how great the military is. The military is dedicated to fighting for that country on a grander scale than the individual. Some people are not meant to fight. Some people can't fight a lick, and they should never be thrown in a fight. And if they are, they'll probably be bullied extremely. Well, let's come to an understanding that we got American citizens in both of those categories. There are some people born for war. There's warriors that are born for war. It's not a glory thing all the time, but sometimes you need those type of warring warriors to fight for your family, for your side, for your country, because they're going to do the best job at doing it. Now, obviously, the problems that can come across down the line is when you have a variety of those warriors, and some of those warriors don't always have a good cause in mind. They just want to catch the next bully on the other side. You know, if you could recall, I don't have the footage on me right now. I may edit it later, but if you can recall, like the Captain America Marvel, not the original story, but how they did the Marvel Universe, the current one that we have in our current decade. So remember, Captain Rogers was like, man, he was asked by the scientist. He was like, so you want to go and beat up bullies? He's like, no, I just wanted to, bring a peace to both sides and stop them from, beating people up. Versus you had the other guy who I think it was the general at that time. He was wanting him to be in a part of the program to get the serum, but he was all over zealous and, ready to clobber somebody up on the head and had no intent of being a peacemaker, so to speak. I'm not going to get too much in that story because that story obviously got extended history where we can comment on that all day long too. But the point that I'm making with that is you have those forefronts on all sides of the American view. First of all, you have the law, and you have the laws of the land, obviously, which is the Constitution and all of the applicable laws that apply under that, the amendments, et cetera, that are meant to balance each other. And when you have anybody with a right mind, I'm going to just make this point short and clear and concise. When you have anybody with a right mind executing all those things, it can be done effectively, period. Period. Now, on the flip side of that, and we'll talk a little bit about both sides. When you have an over enthusiast, like the example that we gave earlier with the Captain America, versus the Captain America who was like, I'm supposed to want to have balance. We're meant to protect each other. If we really were to carry that out, like say our name really meant what it says, which obviously we know it doesn't because we've had too much history based on it. But that don't mean that we can't work to get to a place. Just imagine the real America being what it was always forecast for. And we're not going to get too much in that, but we're saying that to say this. When the laws are executed properly, respectfully, as they should be, you don't have to have a restraint. And I'll say this. Say you have two families. You got one family. Both of the families have a dominancy, just like, again, the Captain America and I forget who the other guy was in the movie. Is irrelevant long as you understand his point of view. And then you got a family like that. So you got a family goes around, they want to exert their power and bully everybody. And, pimp slap everybody and Will Smith them or whatever you want to call it. Then you got the other family that's like, you know what? Yeah, well, we got all these rights. We got a right to bear arms. We got a right to defend our family. And they mean that. And it's pure-heartedly. That's exactly what they mean. Not just defend the family, defend the country. If we had to fight, like if we were in a situation like, like Russian them right now in Ukraine. Say we were the small guy, or the smaller guy, I should say, because that's going back and forth. But say we were the smaller guy and like we needed a little help or something like that. Wouldn't it be special if the civilians respected the laws and we taught respect to each other to the point where if we needed to fight, not just the military, because the military has to start and do the job, obviously, like they're doing, but they needed all the civilians to step up too. Obviously, they needed the guys. They was like, hey, everybody that stay behind. Notwithstanding, equal rights, obviously nowadays a woman, for those that don't necessarily have chivalry, and for the women that want to come, the women that will want to help fight the war, which in this case, I've seen some examples that there were some. But the point is, when you have a situation like that and you got a country's like saying, you know what, whatever little things that we got going on inside, we got a bigger problem. Somebody's coming from the outside right now trying to take us down. Let's put that on hold and function like a bigger family and do what we need to do. Can you imagine the readiness? Can you imagine that readiness? I'm in that right there. Food for thought. Just imagine that readiness. So going into, again, like I said, I wanted to displace who we was. So hopefully I made it clear that we represent hardcore, the Second Amendment, and against any infringement on it. However, with that being said, we also mean to be that the Captain America side. I'm using his name, but I'd be not necessarily the best example when you look at the real comics. But I'm just using his example. We want to represent that side. Like, when he contended against Fury and it was like, hey, y'all making, mass destruction. And this is the military, not the civilians, the well-regulated civilians at this point. He's like, y'all making weapons of mass destruction. Y'all about to nuke New York in a alien invasion, and not give us a chance to fight and stand. Imagine that, in a real world scenario. So, you got people like that on both sides, from the military and from non-military. Obviously, the checking the system from the Second Amendment, we already know the clear representation that it kind of put over. And we're going to have a good conversation, obviously, on the 7th with William Kirk from Washington Gun Law on some of the legalities of things and some question and answers. So if y'all want to check that out, make sure y'all swing by. You can come in the chat, comment, and so forth. But the point is, coming from that perspective, now I'm going to pause that for a second, and I'm going to go into where the confrontation is. So you got both sides of the coin. These are not all the sides of the coin, but these are the main two sides of the coin. You got an extreme one way, and then you got an extreme the other way. So back in the day, supposedly, obviously, the NRA, they were leading stuff. And, obviously there's a lot of history in that in regards to fighting for your rights, the Second Amendment, et cetera, and things like that. Well, obviously, I'm going to play a video for you to just open up that view a little bit. And I want your feedback. Leave your feedback in the comments, however you think, whatever side you might think you're on. Even if you like me, I'll let you know straightforward. I'm not in the middle, as in undecided. I'm clearly on one side, but with correctness, with the utmost respect of that one side. However, I do recognize negativity from both sides. One person is like, you know what, this other party is just trying to shut guns down altogether, which is not even American. That is not. It doesn't even represent any. The Constitution doesn't represent the human right of self-defense, et cetera, and we can go on, and we will throughout this time, because that's what we're about. We're about to open up doors to enlighten, make sure politics are held accountable, both sides, both ways, and made it clear. I just want to make a general statement when it comes to that too. It is not one party that decides or that justifies everything. So you're not just going to have, even though like in our subject, our Second Amendment right, obviously the Democrats right now have an agenda to take away every gun from, except for everybody that's rich and, et cetera, and we can go on and on about that and play you their own footage and their own statements. And then you got the other side that's like, hey, well, supposedly we want to do everything the opposite of them. It's not always about doing things the opposite. It's about checking the rule, looking at the rule, letting the rule check itself, and then, putting it out there like, well, where we have a misconception in this. Going back to that family that was those families that I was giving you an example of earlier. So you got you got that family that's like bulldogs, and you know they want to pimp everybody, etc. Then you got the other family that's like, hey, we got the same guns, same power. We shot with our stuff. We know how to use it if we need to use it. You know, same skill set. I'm not putting them in a different skill set, but we respect life, we respect family, we respect people, and we respect things that go on. First of all, I want to make something clear, because so many times we call ourselves, meaning both sides, because apparently they're the only two sides. Obviously, the independent party ain't. I don't recall anything in history with them ever doing anything. But that's just a quote off the top of my head. They may have. However, for the longest, it's either been back and forth, Republican or Democrat. The point is, for my personal stance, it's not about a side. If I see you infringing on either side, I'm going to have a problem. And I'm going to want that addressed, and I'm going to fight for and against the infringement of it. But I'm also at the same time going to fight for the safety and the concern, like the second family that we gave an example for. You can do things, but you can do them right. When you do them right, the less conversation you have to have about something, unless somebody just has an agenda, which we already know both sides obviously have agendas. Fanatic one way, fanatic the other way. None of it's good. Life needs to have a balance in the midst of it. You got to have a balance. So, all right, I'm gonna go into. I got a lot more to say, but I'm gonna go into this little insert so we can have a talking piece of kind of where I'm coming from, and again, like I said, I want to get y'all feedback, both sides, and everybody's welcome to comment in this channel. My declaration is: make sure you respect everybody, because we don't play. We're grown-ups, and we don't play disrespect. So respect people. Say your opinion. Say, if you really want to get something solved, say it. Let me make this one statement before I play this clip. All right. So real people that's trying to heal a problem will try to listen. They're not, and I'm not just going to get on one side, but they're not just going to go ahead and try to quickly, sneakily pass the law that has an agenda on it, with an agenda, actually probably with 50 million agendas on it, and then try to sneak it by you and say it was a donut, say it was greens and vegetables or something like that, when it was obviously a cholesterol donut. So those things, you can already tell people's negative intent, negative ill will towards something. You're not healing the problem. Obviously, look, you got a problem. We got problem. We got people that's crazy in the world. There's always been that. There's never been a time that has not been crazy in the world. You don't act like, one school shooting or one mass shooting here, there, that never happened. We've had whole neighborhoods. Whole neighborhoods kill people. So don't even play like that. I don't even want to hear, that little one thing. And I'm sensitive. Don't get it wrong. I'm sensitive to everybody's sorrow, family loss, from any incident. If I'm going to be more sensitive to one than the other, then I'm going to think about the whole cities that died versus a classroom, a couple of people, and you want to get sensitive, but you never was sensitive when whole cities were being taken out, things like that. So we're going to try to keep it outside of that facet. But I'm going to go into this clip, and then we're going to comment a little bit more. And again, like I say, your feedback is well over welcome. So let's go into it, and we'll get into it later. I may pause here and there, for some brief inserts. All right, so here we go.
One of the most aggressive marketers of assault weapons in the U.S. has been put under a national spotlight following the Texas school shooting. The gunman, who killed 19 children and 2 adults last week, used a semi-automatic weapon manufactured by family-owned business Daniel Defense. The company has adopted controversially vigorous tactics of marketing and selling its weapons. For example, until the day after the Uvalde massacre, Daniel Defense posted a message on its homepage promoting a lottery with a prize of $15,000 to spend on guns and ammunitions. After the shooting, the business posted a message online saying it was, quote, deeply saddened by the incident. In response to a request for comment, Daniel Defense asked that we direct our questions to federal authorities. So joining us now is Ryan Busse. He's a former executive for a firearms company and is now a vocal critic of the industry. He serves as a senior advisor for Giffords, and he's also the author of Gunfight: My Battle Against the Industry That Radicalized America.
Okay, before I go into a little bit more, now I did a little bit of research on Ryan, and for those that don't know, like I didn't know, I was like, that's why I was like, let me hear this and stuff like that. First, let me comment on this. Obviously, you already hear this going one-sided. They're going against Daniel Defense's methodology of advertisement because of the laws, they can't go after him, for somebody, using a gun to kill people, which you should not be able to go through, because every human being, every adult, I don't care how old you are, every human being, let's just say every human being, kid or not, because kids learn from an early age, whether, you're talking about the kids shooting or not, you are responsible for your own actions. Only other person that's responsible for your actions, depending on the circumstances, which is why it's usually litigated in court when it comes to those circumstances, is the parent. For a minor, you're responsible with how you raised your kid and what you did, and you may and should probably be included in a lawsuit if you don't take the right processes. Now, if you did the right processes and you did everything in your power to, and you taught your son or your daughter right, and it's a trail and it's a choice that they made, then they are individually accountable for the actions that they did, period. Now, I'm not even in the equation except sympathizing with the families who lost lives, the cities who's lost generations of family, et cetera, down the line. But at the end of the day, I also should not have to pay any price for somebody else's action. That's what due process is what we said. Due process. If I'm sharing opinions, which to me, this particular statement is not an opinion, like your boy that just didn't get the death penalty. I'm like, how much do you have to put in the hand of a jury when you're already convicted for the crime, you're already confessing, you already know, and we already got multiple media? How much stuff do you need to have to face the law? Like, why would you have the death penalty if there is not a proper use for it? But we're not going to go too far in that. But that's my stance. If you're going to use the proper process, there should be an absolute. It shouldn't be people in death row that did 20 times less than an individual like he did and don't get the death penalty, but just get life in prison. And yet people probably on death row for like cocaine running or something, or just having some crack in their pocket, for a small killing of one person that wasn't even a family member. I'm like, come on, what kind of sense are we making in life? Concerning our laws and things like that. And we know the corruption of the system. Obviously, you have a good lawyer, you can get all kinds of places with things and stuff like that. But I paused it right here. Not so much for the early part that we watched. Obviously, we see the confrontation that's going on and presently in litigation and things like that. But more so because this guy, Busse, kind of piqued my interest when I looked at his background story, and some people may know more than me, obviously, that's been in it that long. Obviously, I've been in the gun game for a very long time, DOD, Homeland Security, etc. But in the midst of that, some of these backgrounds I didn't know. Like, I didn't know his story, and I actually read up a little bit on his story. I'll give you one of the pages where I read up on it, so you can take a look at some detail if you don't already know stuff. As a general glance, before I play the rest of this clip, as a general glance, he came off to me as, like, from the top, as a Judas Iscariot. But I was like, let me read through his story. How did he get where he was from one side to the other? Again, what we talked earlier, and when I'm talking about from his commentary, he went, remember those two extremes that I talk about? He went from one extreme to the other extreme. It's a big difference. So the reason why it sparked my curiosity, because I want to let you know who I am. All right. So number one, I would have saw some of the things that he's going to comment and say. And as you already know, I gave you the example of the two families, one in the hardcore family, which quote unquote technically would kind of represent maybe like the NRA, so to speak. You know, some of the history that's within the NRA. We'll say that much. Not everybody that was in the NRA. And obviously the flip side, the Democrats who want to ban every gun that ever lived except for tyrant control, you know, because obviously that's what they're heading to, because apparently they have done nothing for crime. Period. Like no laws have been passed except laws infringing on the Second Amendment and other. It's like you don't even believe in it. Why you playing like, yeah, we believe in the Second Amendment, but we need to take your guns. The opposite of what it says. You know, I'm like, you know, make some sense in life. But like I said, we're gonna have a lot more of those conversations on other podcasts. So I'm gonna play a little bit more of this, and then I'm gonna comment a little bit more later, kind of what I'm talking about. You know, kind of how he comes off. So pay attention. Let me know if you think it's more of a Judas Iscariot versus a Iron Man. And you know what I mean by Iron Man. Obviously, Iron Man got robbed and almost he was supposed to be assassinated, you know, and then next thing you know, he was enlightened. So he didn't give up guns. He didn't give up making warfare. He just gave up making it for a different purpose and for a right purpose. Versus Judas Iscariot was like, you know what? He's the money changer. He's stealing the money, and he's like the other side talking about paying me. So let me switch, you know. So give me your kind of view on how you feel about that. And I'm not saying, don't get it wrong, I'm not accusing him absolutely of that, but I'm telling you by what he says kind of takes me there. And then when I read up, and again, I'll give you that footage later, but let's go into it.
Hey, Ryan, thanks for being here. So I'm so fascinated by your own personal story. So before we get to some of these questions, I just want you to tell us a little bit, if you can, about how you went from working in a firearms industry to now speaking out against it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I grew up with guns. I still own guns. I'm a gun owner. I hunt and shoot with my boys, with my dad. It's part of my culture. I worked in the industry for 25 years. But I became increasingly troubled through the first part of my career with the trajectory that the industry was taking. I fought for the remainder of my career to keep my company and my career out of this sort of incendiary blow up of tactical culture and AR-15s. I feared where it was going. Like I said, I fought against it. I tried to throw wrenches in it. I tried to keep the industry from going there. I feared we would one day end up in times and places like Uvalde and Buffalo. And here we are, and I'm none too happy about it. I wish we weren't here speaking today, but we are.
I do want to ask you about this specific company that we were just talking about, Daniel Defense. You call this company the, quote, poster child of egregious, aggressive marketing. Why do you see their practices as so problematic? What exactly are they doing? And your experience in the industry, why are they doing that?
Well, Daniel Defense is really emblematic of what happened to the industry, certainly over the last 10 or 12 years. Prior to about 2004, 2005, tactical gear of any sort and hardly any AR-15s could even be displayed in industry trade shows by the rules and regulations that the industry set forth. In other words, there was an agreed upon decency and responsibility, you know, lines that were not to be crossed. But as those lines were removed, where one or two companies sold AR-15s soon, and now there would be over 500 companies selling them. And when that happened, and those are basically all the same gun. They're modifications of the same gun, but they're all the same gun. And when that happens, there's one way, you know, there's a few ways to set yourself apart: quality, of course, and brand name. But one of the main ways is through marketing. And so Daniel Defense and some other companies have decided to use really aggressive marketing. And so they have taken, not only did they break norms that were in place 15 years ago, but they continue to break them. One of the social media posts just days before the Uvalde shooting happened, the Daniel defense had a small toddler sitting on the floor in a dressed up photo. But there you have it right there with a Bible verse above it, a Proverbs Bible verse, as if God was ordaining that this small toddler should use and learn this AR-15. That's the sort of thing that you absolutely did not see 10, 15 years ago. That's the sort of thing that I detested, that I still think is irresponsible. It's wrapping white Christian nationalism right up with the AR-15. It's walking it right up to the line. And I think that's very irresponsible. But Daniel Defense has largely built a company on that sort of marketing.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so before she goes in, let me comment just a little bit on that. Now, remember what we said earlier. You got barriers of respect and so forth. So I'm not here. I'm not judging Daniel's Defense's free speech and whatever they want to do. There's going to be variants of everything that all of us do and statements that we all make. Now, I'm going to tell you where I kind of very much differ of what he's saying. Now, there's some of the same respects to we should do everything within decency and respect. That being said, each human being is not the same human being, and each human being has their own level. So what makes sense to me is, since I feel that I want to focus on safety, because one of the other things that we're going to be is definitely a safety channel. We're going to have a lot of we already have some basic gun safety things that we went over so far, and we're going to have a lot of other safety issues. Those are going to be some of our discussions, different types of safety, different types of practices, respect practices in different categories, carry and conceal, respect, and many other things that we'll have down the line. But in general, my focus, I learned in life, you shouldn't keep your focus on necessarily, say, one person that you feel may be doing something positive in a negative kind of way. Because the reality is this: listen to you hear the quote that he said. Now, I don't know if the numbers are accurate, but I can suspect that some of them probably was. He said it went from 50 to 500 companies that do that. That's fine. That's growth and that's development. Now, what statistic he did not give, which he probably first of all doesn't have, and he's not focusing on the point. I always try to focus on the point. Now, what's my point? The point is, all the industries, if I'm to, like what our channel, this is what our channel promotes, not just the Second Amendment and the rights that we have, but it promotes the safety of those things. Keep things in moderation. Do things with respect. Now your moderation is different than my moderation, and that's respect. When you respect that like that. However, if you got a standard, which I have a standard, I'm going to live by that standard. I don't expect everybody to exactly live where I'm at on that standard. There may be some people that do a better job than I do. There may be a whole lot of people that do a way worse job than I do. But if anything, within that respect, you're going to get to the point where if you have common sense, we call it CSV, common sense variables. If you have common sense variables, you're going to understand this. My object is not to focus on those people that are doing wrong. Again, just like all the lawbreakers that we have that we're doing absolutely nothing in political office against and to help, whether to help them or to help the people that are affected by them. Thus, obviously, people feel like they need to use their American right to bear arms and have arms and use whatever procedures necessary. Some people don't like to carry guns, but some people want to, be carrying conceal. Other people was like, I just need it in my home, or I just need to keep my practice up and that I'm good with it. So if I need it, something go down, I'm ready to do what I need to do to protect my family, mine, and my country in that process. And that's my point on everything. That's why I extremely will not go to the negative anti-gun side, but with the pro-gun side, being an absolute pro-gun, there's a respect. If I come across like you can every example you can have in life can be done and in two extremes. Now, I'm cutting out the anti ones right now, the anti guns. I'm talking about two extremes towards gun rights. So you can be that bully, be like, yeah, I got my right and I'm a bet and da 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 da. Or you can be like, yeah, I have my right, I'm gonna use it. And it's for the good. Maybe I'm a farmer and I want to, that's how I get my food, because I don't trust, obviously, the government, because a lot of the government can't be trusted. And what I mean, I'm talking about everything, food, FDA. I did work with FDA and got food sickness in the FDA's cafeteria. And so did a lot of other people. Hello? Yet, we depend on them to approve, and give people the go ahead. We know companies are getting paid. If you got some money, you could pay people under the cut. The way certain restaurants are as foul as the FDA's cafeteria is, which was rat infested, by the way. So, you got situations like that. And as a human being first, and then, of course, since we are in America, as an American, you kind of want to be in a situation where, hey, my family, we're going to eat some good vegetables. And you know what? We're not going to eat that pink meat that's served at the store that's allowed to be passed with 50 million chemicals in it that we can't even pronounce or understand, like a pack of cigarettes, all kinds of stuff in it that's maybe toxic for you, etc. Approved, AKA by the FDA. And along with COVID and everything else, in the opinion, there's a stance where it's like, me and my family are going to eat this way, and you and your family can eat that way, and that person in their other family might eat it a little bit in between both. They might like, okay, but I'm gonna eat some of this, but not all of this, and I'm gonna watch. And that's your human right. That's your God-given right to make a choice for yourself. Now, within respects, we got to live with each other. There's a respect. Never judge somebody by somebody else. Don't judge that family that has decency and order, and yet they want to execute their right because you see that other family that's walking around like bullies and stuff. That's never a justifiable judgment on society. And obviously we see with most of the Democrats are doing it. It's disrespectful. That stuff in New Jersey, that's disrespectful, what's going on right now. I'm not going to get into too many of the questions that we're going to ask when we have William Kirk on, but we're going to talk about some of the legalities of those things when we have, and open up, for the legal side to get a bigger understanding as a common civilian, how these things function and how these things work. But that's where I come off at when it comes to, like this subject. So I'm going to go into a little bit more, and you'll see. I'm not going to play this all the way through, but I just want to give you enough of the point that we make.
I was so struck by that image when I saw it as well, and we just played it on our screen. So that's just, I think that really got a lot of people to raise questions about this company and about their marketing. I mean, you also say that Daniel defends.
Oh, let me pause that for a second also, so I can make a double point. While they're making a point on them, and I within respect, I understand the point that they're making. The other side has those same type of points. We have a president right now who you already know does not believe in the Second Amendment, and it has even said things to the extreme of, we can get it changed or basically cut out altogether. So I'm like, how, as the leader of what's supposed to be the free world, make a statement like that and that not really be considered treason? Because you haven't even had the conversation. See, it's one thing to have opinion. Like, obviously I have my opinion along with the laws that already exist. Now, the smarter you are, the wiser of a human being you are, man or woman, when your opinion closely is equal to the truth, that's when it more makes sense. But when your opinion is like, well, I feel we need, like, I'm a parent out there going that I feel all y'all kids need to be whooped by me, and I should whoop everybody's kids because y'all kids is acting up. That's something, first of all, that you need to keep to yourself. And you should probably never say that in public, especially as a leader, a public leader. So with all these, like I say, with all these infringements, so the same thing except worse, like the picture that they showed in regards to Daniel Defense. Obviously, look at the post. You see our post, what we post. Our first video was the president talk about ban. I want to ban everything. Just ban them. Like really, that's what you want to do, but you never sitting down about the conversation about law and order and respect and a concern about people's safety. Like, you already know the true, commentary. Like, you got security. Obviously, you're supposed to have security, but so am I. I'm supposed to have security too. I'm supposed to have a form of being able to protect myself. I'm not supposed to, just because you're the president, like say if I come to his house, obviously I got to even be disarmed of even my rights just to visit because of the security, which makes sense in that circumstance. And it's, I respect that. But the same thing, if you come into my house, I got rules. And I make the rules at that point for my house, because my family to me is more important than you and your family as an individual. Yes, I hold my family more respect than another family. Now, I don't mean that no matter what, like, if my family's doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean that in a general perspective as a father, as a leader, and even as a youth from my elders and so forth. So with that being said, like I say, you got that again, a stream on both sides. So even though we're coming on this video, we're not focused on that. I'm kind of focusing on this dude right here, Busse, because again, he went from one extreme to other. It's almost like you say, well, the other side, it's kind of paying me more. So I'm gonna talk that point, because I'm like, if you're a gun owner, then you understand certain things. You can't all the way be on the other side when you know that infringement is wrong. And infringement has nothing to do with that one or two individual companies that you may feel are over advertising maybe negatively. What about all the ones that are not? Have you not even considered to say, I'm going to stand with them? I'm going to stand with the ones that are doing right, that are showing respect, that talk about our military, and they advertise, for the military or what we do. I mean, even looking at, the military channel, straight military contracts. What, the gun industry, the anti-gun industry is all of a sudden going to ban our military's gun deposits? I mean, obviously Daniel Defense is one of that, because they supply the military with certain arms, but you have many more. And I'm like, what, you planning on shutting them down just because of anti-gun, and now the military ain't gonna have no weapons? What, so it's all kinds of subjects to be had, but that's kind of it. I'm gonna go over a little bit more, and then I'm gonna give y'all the page of reference, and then we're gonna kind of conclude the subject on those matters and stuff. So let's go over a little bit more.
Illustrates how the gun industry has become, quote, increasingly radicalized. Kind of walk us through, you say this has happened over a period of time.
Listen to her terminology, extremely radicalized. I'm not radicalized.
And when you saw that change happen, kind of what could we pin it back to?
Yeah, certainly after 1999 and the Columbine shooting, the NRA, they were faced with the decision we now know through documents that have been exposed and recordings that have been exposed, that they made the conscious decision to not be a part of the policy solution, but instead to use the shooting to further the culture war and drive membership, which they did. Then
let's pause that for a second. Note that in this conversation, his main focus right now, outside of Daniel Defense, was the NRA. Okay, now I know I've looked, and I'm obviously I'm subscribed to a number of channels of 2A representation, from gun developers, gun users, gun fanatics, etc. Because it's art. Like any other art, in addition to everything else, a part of, protection, your rights, to defense, etc. So the point is, the NRA is not everything. So you can focus on them. You can even say a whole lot about the history, like I say, which was exposed. But let's talk about what's not been exposed, sir. So one thing that's not been exposed is all the people that are still law-abiding citizens, that don't overly advertise negatively, that respect their American fellow and woman. And in the midst of all of that, they choose to carry out all their rights in a respectful and a caring manner. And they would stop not just to help their own family, as we've seen happen many times, that, again, the news doesn't try to speak up with, obviously because they're anti-gun people. When shooters are stopped, and they're stopped by law-abiding citizens, not, that's without saying, if it happens, then, praise God, somebody shut down a situation. That was not, and again, it was not them being a John Wayne or something like that, that their life was at risk, not just the people that surrounded. So they had to do that because of their life was at risk in those situations. But again, the agenda people, and like I say, from both sides. So he's talking about one of the agenda people, obviously, saying that the NRA, they had some agendas, which obviously, like he's going over, or there are some facts behind it, and etc. We know history. Everybody has some history. So I'll focus again on this channel. We're going to talk. We're right in the sensible conversation, because we're going to focus mostly not on the negative left or right, but we're going to focus on the absolute right, meaning that which is just, that which is of justice. So I'm not to be judged because of your problems. I'm not even to be judged in my opinions and my carrying out my rights because of whatever problems the NRA had. I'm to be judged because of me. And that's what due process is supposed to be about. Due process. If I come up, I'm in a situation, then that's my due process, not because somebody else was judged a certain way because they were maybe overzealous or unnecessary fanatic in something or whatever. But that is a proper due process. And when people, which is very few times in politics on either side, when people actually talk like that, you possibly have a sensible politician. That's like, look. Like I recalled, I don't have it in front of me, but it was a lady from the New Jersey case with the concealment issue that they're going back and forth with. She doesn't even bear arms, but she at least really respected the fact that some choose to use their rights. And she considered their rights. You know what I'm saying? So she asked questions. Matter of fact, yeah, we can come off of this. Let me go to that, because I actually have that in the list. But she considered, the people who, bore arms, and she was like, look, are you overpricing them in New Jersey? And, if they don't have a budget, if they're a poor family, are you charging it to them that they're, that it's going to be too much for them? And it's crazy. And again, like I say, she's a Dem. So my point, especially when it comes to politics, we need to, and this is another one of our jobs, to expose everybody's agenda, not just to expose it, but so you can have a proper understanding of who you really need to vote for, no matter which side it is. Because there are some Republicans that are anti-gun or have voted anti-Second Amendment. And you need to know that. You need to be aware of that. Just because, you might be fighting like, hey, look, I don't care about this politic or that politic, but this is my politic that I'm concerned about. You need to pay attention, because not everybody on the opposite side is fighting the opposite, battle. Some of them have the same agenda and stuff. So you need to know that from both sides, and make your discretion, when you're making different picks, per different issues and stuff like that. But I'm gonna go into this one real quick, just a little bit of this conversation. Then we're gonna close out till the next podcast. But I want to open it up and
what's the old
break
saying?
it down.
No news is good news. Well, not anymore.
Sorry, I didn't have my anti-commercial on. So that's our commercial sponsor. All right, good. We can skip. All right, let's go.
Talking about the application process, you indicate that there's going to be a fee. Now, how different is that from the current fees to obtain a license to carry a weapon?
Well, one of the fees
This is a part of the
$2.
New Jersey argument.
Currently, and my wife and I just applied second time for our handguns, and we paid $2. You know, we had to take time off of work and go down to the police department, and we gave them $2 to get a handgun. So the police department, it costs them maybe $150 to collect that $2.
Well, that's my question. Did you do any analysis as to what the right amount is to strike
Watch the
that
answer.
balance between the administrative costs versus, you know, is $200 enough or is it not? I mean,
Well,
that's my question.
as you are aware, Counselor, there's many there's a list of different fees. So which fee specifically are you talking about?
All of them, man.
if I
We're talking
recall,
about all of them put together, man.
$200 permit fee.
$200, right?
Let me pause there for 1 second. This is what I'm talking about. Like when you get jokers, look, I ask you a simple question, bro. Now, don't get it wrong. I understand everybody's trying to set up somebody in question, but this is the reality. You need to be ready for what you're talking about, what you declared, and you need to have done your research before you speak on that. You're passing a law. You're trying to pass a law. First of all, that's definitely infringing on the Second Amendment. But in the midst of that, you're not even trying to have conversation. Well, yeah, we did this because we know there's an agenda in there. So you can't answer all the questions, etc. But we'll go. We'll let them finish. We'll let you hear that off the top of your head.
And then you indicated in your testimony that that was intended to deal with the fact that the state now has to process all of these permits, which I totally agree. How was that fee struck? And I understand some of that.
So
portion
I mean, it's a balance, and it'll cost different amounts in different areas of the state. You know, so part of the concealed carry permit process. I don't know if you've ever gone through have you gone through the process? So it's extensive, as it should be, and there are governmental costs. So, in my opinion, is it recouping all the expenses? No, there is a shared expense that the government's going to hold versus the expense of the applicant.
So, and I understand, I just didn't know.
Do you think that amount is off?
I don't know, because I don't have the data upon which to rely to indicate what is the right amount. That's why I'm asking you. I'm assuming
So
that was done.
yeah, so largely that number came up talking to different law enforcement agencies, from the Attorney General's office, state police, several large and small police departments, the Police
None of the
Chiefs
people, huh?
Association.
Nobody in the community.
And that was the collective belief that $200 was a 200 to 300 range was fair, because you don't want to price it out beyond people's reach as well.
And then in addition to $200, there'll be this liability insurance piece, correct?
Which it already is for most
Do you know
families.
how much that would cost a person on average?
The liability insurance is not a fee. That would be a premium, right?
Okay, how much would
That's
that
different.
cost?
My guess would be an average of less than $100 a year.
No, that's
Based upon
liability
talking
insurance
with
costs way
different
more than that.
Insurance industry professionals.
Because as you said, my concern is with you. Are we pricing people out of
Yes,
exercising
he
their right
is.
to bear arms by opposing these fees? That's my concern, because
Absolutely
that
he
could
is.
work to strike this legislation that you work really hard on, if we're imposing fees upon which people are using to exercise their right to bear arms.
Now that you work really hard on, but ain't talk to nobody. y'all had to expedite that system. We're not gonna get into that right now, but like I said, that's just a brief commentary of that particular platform. So I'm gonna give y'all. Let me see. Let me go to. I wanted to give y'all the link to your boy earlier, Ryan Busse. For those that didn't, that wasn't aware. Let me get this link, and we're gonna be out of here. All right, so I'm gonna paste this link, and let me see. I'm not on that chat. Hold on. All right, I'll just show you. All right, so I'll just show you the link, and I'll paste it later in the link. But that's the link right there. It's on the trace.org. So obviously it sounded like just FYI, it sounds like a kind of biased spot because it only. I mean, obviously, they're doing obviously somebody's running an editorial on him, so it's giving a little bit of his backstory, how he was in the gun industry and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden he had to change the heart. Again, my perspective, y'all give me y'all feedback in the chat, but my perspective, I do not see an Iron Man here. I see a Judas more than an Iron Man, more than I see an Iron Man. So I'm gonna say that because nobody's an absolute to me. Everybody has a little bounce. I do see some of his points about some of the experiences that he's had and stuff like that, but I absolutely do not see why he would all of a sudden become anti-gun with that industry and still call himself, a wildlife, a hunter, etc., and a rights bearer, and that has nothing, and even his points about the NRA, that has nothing to do with my rights. The NRA has nothing to do with my rights. They may have supposed to upheld something, and maybe they upheld something to a certain extent. But again, the NRA is not the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is the Second Amendment, and that's a right that the founders understood by practice, by what they had to actually do and execute to survive, and to be able to do what they did to sustain Britain's tyrannical rule within that method. And we'll end at that point, but that's the link, and I'll paste that link later on YouTube. But we're going to close off. That's kind of the majority of what we wanted to talk about kind of today. And again, just wanted to cover those brief subjects. We wanted to give you an introduction of who we were. Again, like I say, to the point. We represent the Second Amendment to its fullest, without infringement. So yes, we are fighters of those that absolutely infringe. It's one thing. You come to us and say, "Hey, man, we need a safe way to do this," and you have a sincere heart. Let's talk. Let's communicate. However, if you're just absolutely talking to friends, oh my gosh, we are going to get into a little bit of that Canada lately. We're going to have some discussions on that because I got some footage on that. That's hilarious. I mean, if you see that dude, I don't even know his name off the top of the head and really don't care to remember it by heart. I'll give it to you when we talk about him. I think it's the Prime Minister. That dude is off the chain. You already see how he's coming, like how he tries to call himself rebuttaling the conservative, what's called the Conservative Party over there, considering he's the liberal, and it's not even a combat. It's just like straight dictatorship. When you hear all these people, including Biden and everybody else, it's straight dictatorship. The New Jersey stuff. If you hear all those guys, they're like, "Oh, but we don't want to do this," and no, we want it needs to be safe. Well, where can we carry? Well, everybody is everywhere considered non-safe, so we can't carry anywhere. So why do we have the permit if we can't carry anywhere? Literally, where we get locked up and have some of the laws there actually would cause people to break the law by their law. You know, come on, you haven't went into deep thought. First of all, you ain't consult the people. Ask them what the problems are. Hey, what's going on, community? What are y'all facing over here that we can sit down to the table and talk? Then you wouldn't have these long discussions trying to pass a law that should have never been passed. But we know, again, like I say, agendas. So y'all already know how that go. Anyway, we're going to close out with that note. Again, we are 2A advocates. We plan on doing a number of things. We're partnering up with other advocates throughout the different states in hope to support each other and information with each other and collaborate information. As you see on in my news section, is composed of a lot of different 2A YouTube members that represent some of the same cause that we do and the same fight that we do about not infringing on our rights that we represent. And with that being said, we're going to end on that very note. Don't infringe, man. You know, it's all right. It's all right. We, to a well-regulated militia of civilians, who we are. Peace out until next time, y'all.
The Second Amendment of the Constitution states that a well-regulated militia, being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not